In the bustling heart of Lagos, where the humid air carried the mingled scents of sizzling suya from roadside grills, frying plantain chips, fresh akara bubbling in palm oil, and the constant honk of okadas weaving through traffic, lived a young couple named Chidi and Adora Okonkwo. They were not the kind of people who made headlines in society magazines or appeared on the guest lists of exclusive parties in Banana Island. No, Chidi and Adora were ordinary in the most extraordinary way. Two determined souls navigating the chaotic, vibrant pulse of Nigeria's economic capital with quiet grit and unwavering principles. Chidi was a tall, broad-shouldered man in his mid-30s, with a neatly trimmed beard that gave him a thoughtful, almost professorial look. By day, he worked as a civil engineer for a reputable, mid-sized construction firm based in Victoria Island. He spent his hours on dusty sites overseeing the erection of mid-rise office blocks, luxury apartment complexes, and the occasional bridge project that promised to ease Lagos's legendary go-slow. He wore hard hats and safety boots, shouted instructions over the roar of bulldozers, and came home with the faint smell of cement dust clinging to his clothes. His salary was good, comfortable enough to cover school fees, groceries from ShopRite, and the occasional treat at Abuka, but it was earned through sweat and long hours, not handed to him. Adora, his wife, was his perfect complement, sharp-minded, quick to laugh, and fiercely organized. She had studied accounting at the University of Lagos and now freelanced from a small home office, balancing books for small and medium-sized businesses across the city, textile traders in Balagan Market, tech startups in Yaba, restaurants in Surulere. She worked late into the night sometimes, spreadsheets glowing on her laptop screen while the children slept, ensuring every kobo was accounted for. Her income was steady, reliable, and entirely her own. They were not poor. Far from it. Their three-bedroom apartment in Ikeja GRA, later upgraded to a spacious mansion in Lekki, was filled with the comforts of middle-class life. A generator that roared to life during NEPA outages, a deep freezer stocked with chicken and fish, air conditioners humming in every room, and a Toyota Camry parked in the compound. But in Lagos, where wealth was often measured in billions or nothing at all, they were simply trying, a word Nigerians use with pride to describe those who hustle daily, refusing to sit idle even when easier paths exist. And an easier path most certainly existed. Every month, without fail, substantial allowances landed in their bank accounts, transfers from both sets of parents that could have paid for private jets, designer wardrobes, or a life of leisure. But Chidi and Adora had made a solemn promise to each other long before marriage. Back when they were university sweethearts stealing kisses under the neem trees on campus. They would build their own future. They would not depend on inherited wealth. They would stand tall on their own feet, prove to themselves and the world that love, hard work, and discipline could create something lasting. It wasn't that they rejected their families. On the contrary, they were deeply proud of where they came from. But pride came with responsibility. Chidi often said, "My father built his empire from nothing. If I live off it without adding my own brick, what example do I set for our children?" Adora would nod, adding, "We want our story to be ours, not an appendix to someone else's success." So they saved. They budgeted. They turned down offers of luxury cars and overseas shopping sprees. They attended weddings in tasteful Ankara outfits sewn by local tailors, not imported lace. They shopped at markets, haggled with mama-put vendors, and celebrated small wins, like closing a big engineering contract or landing a new accounting client, with a quiet dinner of pepper soup and star beer. Their home was filled with love, laughter, and the gentle rhythm of a life intentionally lived. Photos of their wedding day lined the walls. A beautiful ceremony at a cathedral in Lagos, followed by a reception where jollof rice flowed freely and high-life music kept guests dancing till dawn. In those pictures, they looked young, hopeful, certain of the simple dream they shared. One child, one home, one future built together. But as fate and God would soon reveal, their plans were about to be gloriously, overwhelmingly upended. Little did they know that the humble beginnings they cherished so fiercely were merely the calm before a storm of 8 tiny miracles that would reshape their lives forever. The billionaire lineage. Chidi and Adora Okonkwo did not come from ordinary families. Their roots ran deep into the soil of Nigeria's post-independence success stories, the kind that began with nothing but ambition, faith, and a refusal to accept the limitations others placed upon them. On Chidi's side stood Chief Emeka Okonkwo, a towering figure in both stature and reputation. Born in a small village near Onitsha in the 1950s, Chief Emeka had left school early to apprentice with his uncle in the spare parts trade along the bustling banks of the Niger. With sharp eyes and sharper instincts, he saved every kobo, eventually branching into importing heavy machinery during Nigeria's oil boom of the 1970s. By the time structural adjustment policies shook the economy in the 1980s, he had already pivoted into oil and gas. He secured local partnerships with foreign multinationals, won service contracts for offshore rigs, and built a fleet of supply vessels that plied the waters of the Niger Delta. Today, Okonkwo Energy was a household name in the industry, with stakes in exploration blocks, pipelines, and even a small refinery in Port Harcourt. Forbes Africa had listed him among Nigeria's top 20 richest men more than once, and his name opened doors in Aso Rock as easily as it did in Houston or London. Yet those who knew him best remembered the man who still attended village meetings back home, distributing scholarships and boreholes without fanfare. His wife, Lady Ngozi Okonkwo, was no less formidable. Tall, elegant, and always impeccably dressed in custom-made lace or flowing gowns, she had taken a modest inheritance from her own trading family and transformed it into a hospitality empire. Starting with one boutique hotel in Abuja in the early 1990s, she expanded steadily across West Africa, luxury properties in Accra, Dakar, Abidjan, and a flagship five-star resort on the Lagos shoreline that hosted presidents, musicians, and international conferences. Her hotels were known for flawless service, exquisite interiors blending African art with modern design, and a quiet insistence on excellence that mirrored her personality. She sat on boards, chaired foundations for women's education, and was often called upon to mediate disputes among Nigeria's elite because her word carried weight and her judgment was trusted. Adaora's parents were equally impressive, though their wealth wore a quieter, more intellectual face. Her father, Dr. Obi Nwosu, was one of Nigeria's foremost cardiothoracic surgeons. Trained in the United Kingdom during the 1970s, he returned to establish the first private heart center in West Africa, located in Ikoyi. Over decades, he built Nwosu Medical Group into a chain of specialist hospitals in Abuja, Lagos, and Port Harcourt, offering services that rivaled anything in Europe or America. Politicians, business moguls, and even foreign dignitaries flew in for his expertise. He published papers, lectured internationally, and trained a generation of Nigerian surgeons, all while maintaining a calm, almost scholarly demeanor that made patients feel safe in his hands. His wife, Chief Mrs. Ezenwosu, was the vibrant force behind one of Nigeria's most successful luxury import businesses. Specializing in high-end fabrics, Swiss voile, French lace, Italian silks, and exclusive jewelry lines from Paris and Dubai, she supplied the wardrobes of senators' wives, governors' daughters, and Nollywood stars preparing for the AMVCA red carpet. Her showrooms in Victoria Island and Abuja were appointment-only havens of elegance, where clients sipped champagne while browsing fabrics worth hundreds of thousands of naira per yard. Ezen traveled the world for trade fairs, negotiated directly with designers in Europe, and had built a distribution network that reached boutiques from Accra to Johannesburg. She was known for her impeccable taste, her generosity to charitable causes, and her ability to spot trends before they arrived. When Chidi and Adora decided to marry, the union was celebrated as a merger of two dynasties. The traditional wedding in Adaora's village drew thousands, canopies stretching across fields, masquerades dancing, and cows slaughtered in celebration. The white wedding at the Cathedral Church of Christ in Marina was officiated by bishops, with a reception at Eco Hotel's Grand Ballroom that featured live performances by Flavor and Tiwa Savage. Governors sent representatives, ministers called to congratulate, and social media buzzed for weeks with photos under the hashtag Okonkwo wedding. Yet amid all the splendor, Chidi and Adora held fast to their private vow. As they danced their first dance to a slow highlife track, Chidi whispered into Adora's ear, "All this is beautiful, but our life will be ours. We will work. We will build. We will not forget where effort takes us." Adora smiled, pressing her cheek to his. "One child," she whispered back. Maybe two. A simple home. A story we write ourselves. Their parents, proud but slightly bemused, respected the young couple's determination, at least on the surface. The monthly allowances continued, substantial transfers labeled upkeep or family support, enough to buy houses in Lekki or fund luxury cars every year. But Chitty and Adora banked most of it untouched, using only what they needed for emergencies, and lived primarily on their earned incomes. They knew the world saw them as heirs to empires. But they wanted more than inheritance. They wanted identity, character, the quiet satisfaction of knowing that whatever they passed to their children would carry the weight of personal sacrifice, not just privilege. Little did they know that destiny was about to bless them in a way no amount of money could buy, and challenge every carefully laid plan they had made for a simple, self-made life. The joyful surprise. It was a sweltering afternoon in March, the kind of Legos heat that made the air shimmer above the asphalt and turned every short walk into a test of endurance. Adora had just returned from a client meeting in Suralere, her Ankara blouse clinging slightly to her skin despite the AC in the Uber. She felt unusually tired, not the normal exhaustion from juggling spreadsheets and school runs. By then they already had a nanny helping with errands, but a deep, bone-weary fatigue that had lingered for weeks. Her appetite had shifted too, sudden cravings for sour things. Lime, unripe mango, even tamarind straight from the pod, and a quiet aversion to the strong perfume she usually loved. At first, she dismissed it. It's the harmattan dust still in the air, she told Chitty one evening as they sat in the living room of their Acadia apartment, ceiling fan whirring overhead. Or maybe I'm coming down with malaria again. But when her period, always reliable, was 2 weeks late, a small seed of suspicion took root. She bought the test kit discreetly from a pharmacy in Maryland, slipping it into her handbag among receipts and hand sanitizer. That night, after the house was quiet, she locked the bathroom door and waited the longest 3 minutes of her life. 2 pink lines appeared almost instantly, bold, unmistakable. Adora emerged with the stick in her trembling hand, eyes wide. Chitty was marking up blueprints at the dining table, highlighters scattered around him. She simply held it out. He stared for a moment, then leapt up so fast his chair clattered backward. Positive, he whispered, as if saying it louder might make it vanish. She nodded, tears already spilling. He pulled her into his arms, lifting her slightly off the ground in the way he had when they were dating. They laughed and cried at once, the kind of joy that feels too big for the body to contain. They knelt right there on the tiled floor and thanked God, hands clasped, voices overlapping in prayer and praise. The next weeks were a whirlwind of confirmations and planning. They chose one of Adora's father's private clinics in Ikoyi for the first scan, partly for privacy, partly because Dr. Nwosu insisted on overseeing his daughter's care personally. On the day of the appointment, Chitty took half the day off work, dressing in his best native attire as if attending a ceremony. They sat in the cool, marble-floored waiting room, Adora sipping cold malt to settle her nerves, Chitty scrolling baby name lists on his phone and reading them aloud. I like Chikwudi for a boy, he said. Means God exists. Strong name. Or Ifioma, Adora replied. God's goodness. For a girl. They were still debating when the sonographer called them in. The room was dim, the gel cold on Adora's stomach. The wand moved slowly, and the screen flickered to life with grainy black and white images. The sonographer's eyebrows lifted slightly, then higher. 1, 2, 3. She counted softly, moving the wand again. 4 and 5. Chitty leaned forward so quickly he nearly bumped the monitor. 5. Adora's hand flew to her mouth. Yes, the sonographer said, turning the screen toward them. Quintuplets. 5 distinct sacs, 5 heartbeats. Congratulations. The room seemed to tilt. Chitty sat down hard on the stool beside the bed, eyes fixed on the 5 tiny flickering pulses. Adora stared, tears streaming silently. 5 babies. 5 heartbeats where they had expected one. They left the clinic in a daze, walking slowly to the car park as if the world had shifted under their feet. Chitty kept repeating, 5. 5 children, half laughing, half praying. Adora's hand rested protectively on her still flat stomach, already imagining how it would grow. Word spread carefully at first, close family only. The grandparents-to-be reacted with a mixture of shock, delight, and immediate mobilization. Chief Emeka declared it a multiplication of blessings and began planning trust funds. Lady Ngozi booked the best maternity specialists from South Africa. Dr. Obi reviewed every skin personally, calling colleagues in London and Houston for second opinions. Ezen started sourcing the finest baby fabrics for layettes that would befit such a miracle. But Chitty and Adora remained grounded. They refused offers of a bigger house immediately. "We'll manage here until they arrive," declined private chefs. "I will cook my own meals," and politely turned down the suggestion of moving into one of the family estates. "We want our children born in our home, not a palace." Instead, they prepared with fierce practicality. They converted the guest room and home office into a nursery, painting walls a soft, gender-neutral yellow sourced from a local market. They bought 5 cots secondhand from an expatriate family leaving Lagos, sanded and repainted them themselves on weekends. Adora sewed curtains from affordable Ankara prints, while Chitty assembled a massive changing station from IKEA flat packs. They shopped for diapers in bulk at Ida Moda, negotiating prices like seasoned traders. They attended antenatal classes at a government hospital in Yaba to learn alongside other expectant mothers, not in exclusive private sessions. Evenings were spent reading parenting books borrowed from the local library, titles on multiples, breastfeeding, sleep training. They prayed nightly, asking for strength, health, and wisdom. Friends and church members brought gifts, hand-knitted booties, bowls of pepper soup to boost Adaora's blood, prayers written on cards. Adaora's belly grew at an astonishing rate. By the 5th month, she looked full-term with a singleton. Strangers on the street blessed her. Market women gave her extra fruit for the Pekin Dem, and Okada riders slowed down to shout, "Mama Ejima," even though it was far beyond twins. They dreamed cautiously. 5 names were chosen, 2 spare sets in case of surprises, 5 car seats ordered, 5 everything. They felt ready. Overwhelmed, yes. Terrified, sometimes. But ready. They had no idea that the greatest surprise of all was still waiting. 3 more heartbeats hidden quietly in the shadows of the scan, 3 more miracles preparing to turn their world of careful plans into a beautiful chaotic abundance beyond anything they could have imagined. The miraculous birth. The day the octuplets were born began like any other high-stakes Lagos morning. Traffic snarling along the 3rd mainland bridge, generators humming across the city to compensate for yet another power outage, and the sun already promising another scorcher. But for Chitty and Adora, it was the culmination of months of anxious waiting, endless prayers, and a pregnancy that had defied every medical expectation. Adaora's due date had been cautiously set for late October, but by early September her body was signaling that the babies would not wait. Her belly was enormous, an awe-inspiring, almost comical sight that drew stares, blessings, and unsolicited advice wherever she went. She could no longer see her feet, slept propped up on a mountain of pillows, and moved slowly, one hand always supporting the small of her back. Blood pressure checks were daily, glucose tests weekly, and specialist visits twice a week at her father's flagship hospital in Ikoyi. A team of obstetricians, neonatologists, anesthetists, and pediatric surgeons had been on standby for weeks, rehearsing every possible scenario like a military operation. On the morning labor began, Adora woke Chitty at 4 a.m. with a sharp gasp. "It's time," she whispered, clutching her side. Contractions had started gently, but were already coming every 10 minutes. Chitty sprang from bed, calm on the outside but praying fervently under his breath as he helped her dress, gathered the pre-packed hospital bag, and called the driver who had been on 24-hour alert. The grandparents were alerted by text, brief, factual messages. "Labor has started. Heading to hospital now. Pray." They arrived at Nwosu Medical Center just after dawn. The private wing had been cleared for them, an entire floor reserved, operating theaters prepped, incubators lined up like soldiers in the NICU. Dr. Obi himself met them at the entrance, gown already on, face serious but eyes twinkling with the pride of a grandfather-to-be. "My daughter," he said, kissing Adaora's forehead. "Today we welcome miracles." Because of the high risk, a cesarean section had been planned from the start. Adora was wheeled into the theater at 7:15 a.m., surrounded by more medical personnel than most Nigerian hospitals saw in a week. Chitty, scrubbed and gowned, held her hand until the spinal anesthetic took effect. Monitors beeped steadily, tracking 8 tiny heartbeats and 1 very brave mother's. The lead obstetrician, a renowned professor flown in from South Africa at Dr. Obi's request, made the first incision at 7:42 a.m. The room fell into focused silence, broken only by the calm instructions of the surgical team. Baby 1, boy, delivered at 7:45. A thin, fierce cry filled the air. Chitty's eyes filled with tears as the tiny infant, barely 1.2 kilograms, was whisked to the waiting neonatology team. Baby 2, girl, 7:46. Another cry, stronger this time. Baby 3, boy, 7:47. Baby 4, girl, 7:48. Baby 5, boy, 7:49. The theater team worked with practiced precision, each baby handed off immediately to its own dedicated resuscitation station. 8 in total, each staffed by a pediatrician, nurse, and respiratory therapist. Chitty watched in stunned gratitude as 5 perfect, tiny humans were stabilized, wrapped, and moved to incubators. Then the professor's voice changed, surprised, almost disbelieving. There's another sack. Baby 6, girl, 7:51. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Chitty gripped the edge of the operating table. Adora, numb from the chest down but fully alert, lifted her head as far as she could. Another. The professor continued, voice steady but laced with wonder. Baby 7, boy, 7:52. Baby 8, girl, 7:53. 8 cries now mingled in the theater, small, reedy, but fierce. 8 tiny bodies, each no larger than a bag of sugar, were carried to their stations. The room erupted in quiet exclamations, prayers, and even laughter of disbelief. Nurses wept openly. One of the anesthetists whispered, "Chukwu Gozi Yunu. God has blessed you." The medical team had prepared for 5. They had extra staff and equipment on standby for emergencies, but no one, no scan, no specialist, no maternal fetal medicine expert, had detected the 3 additional babies. Later reviews of the ultrasound images would show how cleverly the extra 3 had hidden behind their siblings, heartbeat echoes overlapping, sacks tucked in shadows. It was, the professors would agree, one of the rarest medical events in obstetric history. Chitty was allowed to see them briefly before they were all transferred to the NICU. 8 incubators in a row, each containing a fragile fighter swaddled in soft blankets, tubes and monitors keeping vigil. He touched each tiny hand through the portholes, whispering names they had chosen and a few new ones they would now need. Adora, still in recovery, was shown photos on a tablet, tears streaming down her face as she counted 8 perfect faces. The grandparents arrived soon after, a quiet procession of wealth and emotion. Chief Emeka, usually so composed, stood before the NICU window with tears rolling unchecked into his igbada. Lady Ngozi clutched her geli, murmuring thanks to Chukwu Okaike. Dr. Obi, the consummate professional, reviewed charts with colleagues but kept returning to hold his daughter's hand. Ezen distributed envelopes of thanksgiving to nurses and orderlies, her voice breaking as she prayed over each incubator. News leaked within hours. Reporters gathered at the hospital gates. Social media exploded. Lagos woman delivers octuplets. Miracle birth at Nwosu Hospital. 8 babies survive against all odds. The family issued a short statement asking for privacy and prayers, but the nation celebrated anyway. Radio stations played gospel songs in tribute. Churches held Thanksgiving services. Strangers sent gifts and messages of congratulations. The babies spent 10 tense weeks in the NICU, growing stronger day by day under round-the-clock care. Chitty and Adora practically lived at the hospital, taking shifts to kangaroo cuddle each child, expressing milk, learning to tube feed, and change the tiniest diapers imaginable. They named them carefully, drawing from Igbo tradition and Christian faith. Chukwudi, God exists, boy. Nkechi, God's gift, girl. Obinna, Father's heart, boy. Ifeoma, good thing, girl. Kalechi, thank God, boy. Uchechi, God's will, girl. Samtachukwu, praise God with me, boy. Adiz, King's daughter, girl. When the last baby was finally discharged just before Christmas, the family returned home to Lekki in a convoy escorted by hospital security to avoid the press. The mansion's gates closed behind them, and for the first time, Chitty and Adora held all 8 children under one roof, their roof. Exhausted, Overjoyed and utterly transformed, they looked at each other over a sea of bassinets and incubators brought home for monitoring, and made a new vow. These children would be raised not in the shadow of wealth, but in the light of gratitude, discipline, and love. 8 miracles had arrived unannounced, turning every plan they had ever made into a beautiful, chaotic, God-ordained adventure. And the real journey, the one of raising them, was only just beginning. A new home and vow. The octuplets came home one by one over the course of several days, each discharged from the NICU feeling like a small victory parade. The last to leave, the tiniest girl, Adiz, was finally cleared just before Christmas, her weight having crept past the critical 2-kilogram mark. When the convoy of hospital ambulances and family SUVs pulled through the gates of the Lecky mansion that evening, Chitty and Adora stood on the front steps holding back tears. 8 car seats were carefully unloaded, 8 tiny bundles handed over by smiling nurses who had become like family over the past months. The night air was filled with the scent of frangipani from the garden and the distant sound of carols playing on a neighbor's stereo. For the first time, all 10 Okonkwo's were under one roof. The mansion itself had been a wedding gift from both sets of parents. A sprawling 5-bedroom home in Lecky Phase 1 with high ceilings, marble floors, a large compound, and a staff quarter that could accommodate live-in help. At the time they received it, Chitty and Adora had protested mildly. It felt too grand for a young couple planning a simple life. But now, with 8 newborns, every square meter was needed. The ground floor living room had been temporarily converted into a nursery annex, lined with 8 gleaming incubators and monitoring equipment brought home from the hospital. A team of neonatal nurses worked shifts around the clock for the first few months, teaching the parents how to handle feeds, oxygen checks, and the delicate art of bathing preemies. Yet even in this season of overwhelming gratitude, Chitty and Adora held fast to their principles. They paid the nurses' salaries themselves from their savings and freelance earnings, not from parental allowances. They refused the offer of a full-time chef, insisting Adora would cook as soon as she regained strength, with help from a trusted house manager who had been with the family since the wedding. They turned down the fleet of new SUVs the grandparents wanted to provide, keeping their reliable Toyota and adding only one second-hand Hiace bus for school runs in the future. "We are grateful for the house," Chitty told his father firmly but respectfully over a family dinner shortly after the homecoming. "But we will maintain it, staff it, and raise our children in it with our own hands and resources." Chief Emeka had raised an eyebrow. Lady Ngozi had smiled knowingly, but they respected the boundary, mostly. The monthly allowances continued to arrive, now significantly larger and labeled for the children's welfare, but Chitty and Adora redirected most of it into fixed deposits and education trusts they controlled themselves. Life settled into a rhythm that was equal parts exhausting and sacred. Feeds every 3 hours, day and night. Diaper changes that felt endless. Laundry mountains that threatened to overtake the utility room. But also moments of pure wonder. 8 tiny fists waving in unison during bath time. The soft snuffles and coos that filled the house like music. The way the babies seemed to recognize their parents' voices and calm at their touch. Help came in measured doses. 2 experienced nannies were hired, recommended by the church and thoroughly vetted, to assist with night shifts and daily care. Adora's mother moved in temporarily to oversee meals and recovery, cooking strengthening soups rich with periwinkle, yaziza, and stockfish. Chitty took extended paternity leave from his engineering firm, spending days learning to swaddle, burp, and rock multiple babies at once. When both parents were finally too tired to stand, they would collapse together on the sofa in the nursery annex, surrounded by the soft glow of incubator lights and the steady beep of monitors, holding hands and whispering thanks to God for strength. As the months turned into years, a new vow took shape between them, one born not in the romance of university days, but in the crucible of sleepless nights and shared sacrifice. One quiet evening when the babies were about 6 months old, finally out of incubators and sleeping in proper cots, Chitty and Adora sat on the back veranda overlooking the garden. The harmattan wind carried a cool edge, and the sky was clear enough to see stars, a rarity in Lagos. The house was unusually peaceful. The nannies had just finished the bedtime routine, and all 8 were asleep. Chitty spoke first, voice low. "We cannot go back to work the way we used to. Not yet. Adora nodded, resting her head on his shoulder. These children need us, both of us, full-time, at least for the early years. I've been thinking the same. They are a blessing beyond measure, he continued, but also a responsibility beyond anything we imagined. If we hand them over to nannies and grandparents now, we will miss the chance to shape their hearts. Money will always be there. Time with them will not. She squeezed his hand. So we pause. We dedicate these years to raising them properly, in discipline, in faith, in respect. No spoiling, no shortcuts. When they are older, when school and structure take more of the load, we can rebuild our careers. But this season is for them. It was a costly decision. Chitty resigned from his full-time engineering position, taking only occasional consulting projects that could be managed from home. Adora paused all but her longest-standing accounting clients, referring new ones to colleagues. Income dropped sharply, but their savings, careful budgeting, and the untouched portions of family allowances carried them through. The grandparents grumbled at first. Chief Emeka argued that a man should provide. Dr. Obi offered to create executive positions for them in his hospital group, but eventually they relented, seeing the fierce love and unity in the young couple's choice. And so the years of dedication began. The mansion became a place of purposeful simplicity. Toys were chosen for learning, wooden blocks from local carpenters, picture books bought secondhand, a single sturdy tricycle shared among them when they grew older. Clothes were practical and coordinated, often sewn in bulk by a trusted tailor. Meals were nutritious and family-style: egusi, vegetable soup, yam pottage, eaten together at a long table as soon as the children could sit up. Screen time was almost non-existent. Instead, there were stories from the Bible, folk tales told by Adora and Ebo, and songs led by Chitty on Sunday evenings. Discipline was gentle but firm. Sharing was non-negotiable. Manners were taught early. Thank you, Andy. Please, Daddy. And chores began as soon as little hands could manage. Picking up toys, wiping tables, watering plants in the garden. Church every Sunday was mandatory, dressed in matching Ankara outfits. The children learned to pray, to greet elders properly, to wait their turn. Visitors often marveled at how 8 children could play so harmoniously with so little. The grandparents visited often, bearing gifts, but Chitty and Adora set loving boundaries. Expensive gadgets were politely declined or donated, sweets limited, bedtimes enforced even during visits. The children grew up knowing they were deeply loved by wealthy grandparents, but they experienced that love through presents, stories, laps to sit on, outings to the beach, rather than possessions. By their 6th birthday, the octuplets were healthy, bright, respectful children who could recite Bible verses, count in English and Igbo, share a single biscuit 8 ways without fighting, and greet visitors with confident, "Good afternoon, Sir/Ma." They attended a good but not extravagant private school, arrived in the family highest, and came home to parents who were always there. Chitty and Adora looked at each other across the chaos of 8 laughing voices and knew the sacrifice had been worth it. But they also knew something else. For 6 years they had poured everything into their children. They had not, in all that time, poured much into each other. And so, as the 6th birthday candles flickered and were blown out in one collective breath, a new chapter quietly began to form. One that would reclaim the marriage that had carried them through the miracle and test the careful boundaries they had drawn around family wealth once more. Years of dedication. The years that followed the octuplets' homecoming were a tapestry woven from equal parts exhaustion, joy, and unwavering commitment. A period Chitty and Adora would later call their season of sacrifice, though at the time it simply felt like life itself. From infancy through toddlerhood, the house in Lekki Phase 1 hummed with a rhythm unique to a family of 10. The day began at 5:30 a.m., when the first baby, usually Kalechi, the early riser, would stir and set off a chain reaction of wake-ups. Feeds were staggered to avoid total chaos, for babies at a time on bottle schedules carefully charted on a whiteboard in the kitchen. Adora breastfed as long as she could, pumping religiously between direct feeds to build a freezer stock that filled an entire upright unit. Chitty became an expert at preparing formula with one hand while rocking a fussy baby with the other. The nannies helped, but the parents insisted on doing the majority themselves. Every 3 a.m. feed, every soothing session for colic, every first smile captured on a modest phone camera. As the children grew, the mansion adapted. The formal dining room became a play and learning space with low tables, colorful mats from Balagan Market, and shelves of board books and puzzles bought secondhand from expat families leaving Nigeria. The garden was fenced securely and planted with soft grass, a sandbox built by Chitty himself on weekends, and a sturdy swing set welded by a trusted artisan in Aja. Toys were deliberately few and chosen for longevity and imagination. Wooden blocks carved by a craftsman in Oshodi, cloth dolls sewn by Adaora's tailor Andy, a single large plastic truck shared among the boys, and dolls with removable clothes for the girls. No battery-operated gadgets that sang endlessly or flashed lights. Chitty and Adora believed in quiet play that built creativity and cooperation. Meals were sacred family time. Breakfast was akamu or custard with moi. Lunch often rice and stew prepared in massive pots by Adora with help from the house manager. Dinner a lighter affair of yam and vegetable soup or plantain with eggs. From the moment the children could sit in high chairs, they ate together at a long custom-made table with benches that accommodated all 8 side by side. Manners were taught early. Please pass the water. Thank you, Mummy. No food on the floor. Portions were equal, seconds given only after everyone had firsts, and wasting food was gently but firmly corrected with reminders of children who had less. Discipline was consistent and rooted in love. Timeouts in a designated calm corner for hitting or grabbing. Natural consequences, like cleaning up spilled water themselves, for carelessness. Praise was lavish for kindness, sharing, and helpfulness. Bedtime was non-negotiable. 7:30 p.m. baths in rotation, pajamas, family devotion with Bible stories and songs, then lights out by 8 o'clock. Chitty or Adora read aloud every night. Sometimes the same simple book repeated 8 times so each child could see the pictures. The children learned to pray early, tiny voices piping, "Thank you, God, for Mummy and Daddy and my brothers and sisters," in unison. Education began at home long before school age. Adora, with her methodical mind, created color-coded flashcards for letters, numbers, shapes, and Igbo vocabulary. Chitty built a chalkboard wall in the playroom for drawing and early writing practice. They sang counting songs in English, Yoruba, for Lagos context, and Igbo. Church was central. Every Sunday the family arrived at the Redeemed Christian Church of God Parish in matching Ankara outfits. Adora, sewing new sets twice a year. Sitting together in one long pew. The children remarkably still during service because they had practiced quiet sitting at home. Screen time was almost non-existent. The family television was used sparingly for educational DVDs borrowed from the church library or occasional Nollywood family films on Friday nights with popcorn. No personal tablets, no smartphones handed over to quiet tantrums. Instead, there were storytelling sessions where Adora told Anansi tales or village folk tales passed down from her mother, and Chitty shared simplified stories of Nigerian heroes like Queen Amina or Herbert Macaulay. Chores began as soon as little hands could manage. Picking up toys at the end of play, wiping their own tables after meals, watering the garden plants with tiny cans, folding face towels, sorting laundry by color. Praise followed every effort. "Look how helpful Obinna is." So the tasks felt like contributions rather than burdens. The grandparents visited regularly, always announced in advance so routines would not be disrupted. They brought love in abundance, stories, sweets in moderation, outings to Lekki Conservation Center or the beach, but expensive gifts were gently redirected. A proposed set of child-sized iPads was thanked and declined. Instead, the money was requested for the Children's Education Trust. Remote control cars that arrived one Christmas were donated to an orphanage, with the octuplets themselves helping pack them up as a lesson in generosity. Over time, the elders learned the boundaries and respected them, focusing on presence over presence. Health was guarded carefully. Immunizations on schedule, mosquito nets over every cot and bed, regular checkups at a trusted pediatric clinic, not the grandparents' private facilities, to avoid special treatment. When fevers or coughs struck, the household went into gentle quarantine mode. Extra fluids, paracetamol measured precisely, and parents taking shifts through the night. By age 3, the children were potty trained in a coordinated campaign that felt like a military operation but succeeded with charts, stickers, and celebration dances. By 4, they could recite the Lord's Prayer, count to 50, write their names, and greet visitors with confident handshakes and good afternoon, sir/ma. By 5, they attended a modest private nursery school nearby, dropped off and picked up by Chitty in the family hias, uniforms pressed, lunchboxes packed with home-cooked meals. Visitors, church members, old university friends, curious neighbors, often marveled. "How do you manage 8 so calmly?" they would ask. Adora would smile and say, "Routine, prayer, and teamwork." Chitty would add, "And a lot of grace from above." Yet the years were not without cost. Chitty's engineering career remained on hold, limited to occasional consulting that brought in just enough to cover daily expenses. Adaora's accounting practice was reduced to 2 loyal clients she could manage remotely. Savings dwindled, but pride and purpose sustained them. Their marriage, though strong in shared mission, had little room for romance. No quiet dinners, no spontaneous weekends away, no long conversations that didn't eventually circle back to feeds, fevers, or school fees. But the children thrived. Healthy, bright, affectionate, and remarkably disciplined for their age. They played together for hours with nothing but sticks, bottles, and imagination, building houses in the garden, acting out Bible stories, racing across the lawn. They shared without prompting, comforted each other when one cried, and greeted their parents with fierce hugs every morning and night. By their 6th birthday, the octuplets were a testament to the vow their parents had made, raised not in the shadow of billions, but in the warm light of dedicated love, faith, and intentional simplicity. And as that milestone approached, with 8 bright candles ready to be blown out, Chitty and Adora began to feel a quiet stirring, a realization that the season of total sacrifice for parenthood might, at long last, allow a small space for the marriage that had carried them through it all. The fading spark. As the octuplets approached their 6th birthday, the Okonkwo household had achieved a kind of beautiful, hard-won harmony, a well-oiled machine powered by love, routine, and the sheer willpower of 2 parents who had poured every ounce of themselves into their children. The days ran like clockwork, school drop-offs at 7 a.m., work and play in balanced measure, family meals where 8 little voices overlapped in excited chatter, evening devotions, and bedtime stories that sent them off to sleep with dreams of Bible heroes and village adventures. Visitors still marveled at how calm the house could be with 8 energetic 6-year-olds. The children were healthy, bright, affectionate, and remarkably well-mannered, holding doors for guests, saying grace before meals without prompting, and settling sibling squabbles with a quick "sorry, let's share." But beneath the surface of this triumph, something quieter and far more personal was happening. The spark that had once burned so brightly between Chitty and Adora, the one that had carried them through university courtship, a lavish wedding, and the miracle of 8 babies, had dimmed to a faint ember. It hadn't vanished overnight. It faded gradually, the way Legos harmattan dust settles layer by layer until everything feels slightly muted. In the early years, survival had demanded it. Every hand, every minute, every thought directed toward keeping 8 fragile lives thriving. There were no date nights when midnight feeds interrupted sleep every 2 hours. No spontaneous weekend getaways when 8 car seats needed buckling and diaper bags packing. No long, languid conversations that stretched past midnight when exhaustion sent them collapsing into bed by 9 p.m., often in separate rooms if one was on night duty with a fussy baby. Their love had not weakened. It had transformed into something fierce and practical, a partnership forged in shared sacrifice. They still held hands during family prayers. Chitty still brought Adora a cold bottle of malt when she looked weary after a long day of homeschool prep and laundry. Adora still pressed a quick kiss to his cheek when he returned from a rare consulting site visit, smelling of dust and accomplishment. They celebrated anniversaries quietly, with a special family dinner and a small cake shared with the children, because hiring sitters for 8 felt impossible. They spoke in shorthand, finishing each other's sentences about schedules and needs. "Kalechi has a cough. Did you book the doctor? Uchechi needs new shoes. The market run is Saturday?" But the romance, the private glances across crowded rooms, the stolen dances in the kitchen to old high-life tunes, the whispered dreams about future travels and quiet evenings just for 2, had been crowded out. They hadn't been alone together, truly alone, since the night Adaora's waters broke 6 years earlier. Even their conversations now revolved almost entirely around the children. School reports, behavior charts, vaccination schedules, who was outgrowing which uniform. One evening in early October, just weeks before the sixth birthday, Chitty and Adora found themselves on the back veranda after the children were finally asleep. The house was unusually quiet. The nannies had the night off, and all eight were down after an energetic day of garden play. The Lego sky was clear for once, stars visible above the glow of the city. A cool breeze carried the scent of the neighbors' grilling suya and distant Afrobeat from a passing car. Adora sipped a cup of zobo she had brewed earlier. Chitty nursed a bottle of Gulder, condensation dripping onto his knee. They sat in companionable silence for a while, the kind married couples earn after years together. Then Adora spoke, her voice soft but carrying the weight of something long unspoken. "Chitty, do you ever feel like we've disappeared?" He turned to her, brow furrowing. "Disappeared? How?" She gestured vaguely toward the house. "Into them. Into this life we built. I love it. I thank God every day for our children, for the way they're growing. But sometimes, I miss us." The us before 8 heartbeats showed up on that screen and changed everything. Chitty was quiet for a long moment, staring at the garden where the children's swing set stood silhouetted against the night sky. When he spoke, his voice was low, almost surprised, as if the realization had been waiting for permission to surface. "I miss you too," he admitted. "I see you every day, beautiful, strong, the best mother any child could have. But I miss my wife. The one I used to take to jazz nights at Bagabiri House. The one who laughed until she cried when I tried to cook fried rice and burned it black. The one I could talk to about anything, dreams, fears, nonsense, without it always coming back to teething or school fees." Adaora's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled. "Exactly. We've been so focused on giving them roots that we forgot to water our own marriage." They talked late into the night, the longest, deepest conversation they'd had in years. They remembered their courtship, stolen moments between lectures at Unilag, Adora teasing Chitty for his serious engineering notes, Chitty bringing her suya wrapped in newspaper after evening study sessions. They recalled their honeymoon in Obudu, walking hand in hand through misty hills, promising each other a lifetime of adventures. They admitted the small griefs, how exhaustion had replaced passion, how couple time had become a mythical concept, how they sometimes felt more like co-managers of a small village than husband and wife. "We've done well by them," Chitty said finally, reaching for her hand. "They're happy, healthy, respectful. We kept our vow to raise them with discipline and love. But we can't disappear completely. We need time, just us, to remember who we are when it's not about 8 lunch boxes or 8 bedtime stories." Adora squeezed his fingers. "Christmas is coming. The children will be 6 soon, old enough to understand a short separation. What if we took a real holiday? 2 weeks. Somewhere far enough that phones barely work. Just you and me." Chitty's eyes lit up, the same spark she remembered from their dating days. "Where?" She smiled, a mischievous glint returning. "Dubai? We've saved a little. Or Calabar, Cross River, quiet resorts. Or even Paris if we're feeling bold." They laughed softly at the idea of Paris on their modest budget, but the seed was planted. The more they talked, the more the plan took shape. After the 6th birthday celebrations, they would invite both sets of grandparents to stay at the mansion. The elders had been begging for more time with the children anyway. 2 weeks, 14 days to rediscover each other, to laugh without interruption, to sleep past dawn, to hold hands on a beach or in a foreign market and feel like newlyweds again. It felt almost selfish at first, leaving their precious miracles for so long. But then Adora said the words that settled it. "If we burn out completely, what good are we to them? A strong marriage is the best gift we can give our children. They need parents who love God and each other." Chitty pulled her close, kissing her forehead as he had on their wedding night. "Then we do it. After the birthday, we go. We come back better, for them and for us." In the weeks that followed, excitement built quietly. They planned the simple birthday party, homemade cake, games in the garden, a few carefully chosen gifts shared among all 8. They spoke to the grandparents, who agreed enthusiastically, perhaps too enthusiastically, to babysit. And in stolen moments, while folding laundry or preparing school lunches, they exchanged glances that held new promise. The fading spark had not died. It had only been waiting for oxygen. And soon, far from the joyful chaos of 8 little voices, Chitty and Adora would fan it back into flame, planning the escape, with the decision made that they would take a proper holiday after the children's 6th birthday. Chitty and Adora felt a quiet thrill they hadn't experienced in years. It was as if a long-closed window had been cracked open, letting in fresh air and the promise of something just for them. They kept the plan private at first, discussing it only in stolen moments. While washing dishes side by side after dinner, during the rare quiet minutes after the children's bedtime stories, or in whispered conversations on the veranda long after the house had gone to sleep. The first matter was the birthday itself. They wanted it to remain true to their values, simple, meaningful, and family-focused. No extravagant venue at a hotel ballroom, no bouncy castles rented from event planners, no appearance by a children's entertainer in a flashy costume. Instead, they chose the backyard of the Lecky mansion, transformed for one afternoon into a joyful village celebration. Adora took charge of the food, as she always did. She spent days planning a menu that would delight the children without excess. Akara and pap for breakfast, puff-puff dusted with sugar as snacks, jollof rice, with succulent chicken cooked in massive pots over outdoor burners, and a large sheet cake she would bake herself, vanilla sponge layered with buttercream, decorated simply with the children's names piped in colorful icing. There would be plenty of soft drinks, Fanta, Coke, La Casera, but served in moderation, with water and Zobo encouraged first. Fruits from the market, bananas, oranges, watermelon cut into stars, would round out the spread. Chitty handled the games and decorations. He built a makeshift obstacle course in the garden using old tires, planks, and ropes, something the children could race through laughing. He strung fairy lights across the trees, saved from last Christmas, and hung handmade bunting sewn from leftover Ankara scraps. Balloons were limited to a modest bunch in the national colors, green, white, green, to celebrate Nigeria's spirit as much as the birthday. Gifts were shared rather than individual. A new set of wooden blocks for building, a large puzzle map of Africa, a football for the boys and girls to share, and books, beautiful picture books about Nigerian folktales and heroes. Invitations went only to close family, a few church friends with children of similar ages, and the Octuplets classmates from school. No media, no society photographers. The grandparents were, of course, invited as guests of honor, but Chitty and Adora gently reminded them in advance. Please, no extravagant presents. We want the day to be about togetherness, not things. The birthday dawned bright and clear. The children woke early, buzzing with excitement in their matching Ankara outfits. Adora had sewn new sets in vibrant blue and yellow Adire fabric. Breakfast was festive, with the Akara served hot and crispy. Games began soon after. Sack races that had everyone collapsing in giggles, a spirited egg and spoon relay, and musical chairs played to old high-life tunes from Chitty's playlist. The octuplets shone, cheering each other on, helping younger guests, and showing the discipline their parents had worked so hard to instill. When it was time for cake, all 8 gathered around the table, faces glowing in the candlelight. They sang Happy Birthday in English, then a joyful Igbo version Adora had taught them, before blowing out the candles in one collective, triumphant breath. Photos captured the moment. 8 smiling faces, parents beaming behind them, grandparents clapping proudly from the sides. As the afternoon wound down, guests departed with small party packs, homemade chin-chin and a piece of fruit. The children, tired but happy, helped tidy up without complaint, carrying plates to the kitchen and sweeping balloons into a corner. That evening, after baths and prayers, they fell asleep clutching their new shared gifts, dreaming sweet dreams. Later that night, with the house finally quiet, Chitty and Adora sat with the grandparents in the living room. The elders had arrived bearing gifts as requested, modest but thoughtful, storybooks from Lady Ngozi, educational puzzles from Chief Emeka, traditional wooden toys carved in Dr. Obi's village, and beautiful hand-woven mats from Ezen. No gadgets, no excess. Now came the delicate part. Chitty cleared his throat. Daddy, Mummy, Papa, Mama, Adora, and I have something to ask. He explained the plan, a 2-week Christmas holiday, just the two of them. The first real break they would take since the children were born. They had saved for it carefully, booked flights to Dubai on a budget airline, reserved a modest hotel near the beach. They needed this time, not just for rest, but to strengthen their marriage for the children's sake. There was a moment of silence. Then Chief Emika's deep laugh rumbled. "Ah, my son. At last. We have been waiting for you to ask this." Lady Ngozi's eyes misted. "You have given everything to these children. It is time you remembered you are husband and wife, not only father and mother." Dr. Obi nodded gravely. "We will stay here. All of us. The children will be safe, loved, and, yes, we will try to follow your rules." Ezen clapped her hands. 2 weeks. We will cook their favorites, take them to the park, tell them stories of when you were small. Go, my daughter. Go and enjoy. Relief washed over Chitty and Adora. They had feared resistance, arguments about security, or insistence on sending bodyguards or funding a more luxurious trip. Instead, they received enthusiastic blessing. In the days that followed, preparations intensified. Adora wrote detailed schedules, meal plans, school holiday routines. The children would be on Christmas break. Emergency contacts, allergy reminders, none, thank God, and a firm bedtime chart. Chitty installed extra security cameras and briefed the existing staff on continued duties. They packed light, shared suitcases to save on baggage fees, and booked excursions within their budget. A desert safari, a visit to the old souk, perhaps a dhow cruise at sunset. The children were told gently, in an age-appropriate way, "Mummy and Daddy are going on a short trip to rest and pray, so we can come back stronger for you. Grandma and Grandpa will stay here and take care of you." There were a few tears at first, especially from Ifioma, who was most attached to Adora, but excitement soon took over. The prospect of having all 4 grandparents in the house full-time was thrilling. Departure day arrived in early December. The airport run was emotional. 8 children waving from the compound gate, grandparents standing proudly behind them. Chitty and Adora hugged each child twice, whispered individual blessings, and promised souvenirs and stories upon return. As the plane lifted off from Murtala Mohammed International, bound for Dubai, Chitty reached for Adora's hand across the armrest. She squeezed it, eyes shining. 2 weeks, she whispered. "Just us," he replied. Below them, Lagos glittered like a jewel in the night. Ahead lay deserts, skyscrapers, and 14 uninterrupted days to remember who they were when the world was only 2 hearts beating as one. The escape had been planned with care, love, and a little daring. And now, it was finally here. Grandparents' arrival. The day Chitty and Adora were set to depart for Dubai dawned with the kind of golden Lagos sunlight that made even the chaotic city feel full of promise. The octuplets, sensing the excitement in the air, were up earlier than usual, bouncing around the house in their pajamas and asking 100 questions. "Will you bring us snow from Dubai? Do they have jollof rice there? Can we come next time?" Chitty and Adora moved through the morning with practiced calm, double-checking suitcases one last time. Modest luggage containing mostly light clothing, a few nice outfits for evenings out, comfortable walking shoes, and small gifts they had bought for each other as surprises. They had chosen practicality over luxury. A mid-range hotel near Jumeirah Beach, booked through a deal site, economy plus seats on Emirates for the extra legroom, and a carefully budgeted itinerary that included free sites like the Dubai Fountain and affordable experiences like the Spice and Gold Souks. By mid-morning, the sound of car engines announced the grandparents' arrival. It was a convoy worthy of a state visit. Chief Emika and Lady Ngozi arrived first in their gleaming black Mercedes G-Wagon, followed closely by Dr. Obi and Chief, Mrs. Ezen in a silver Range Rover autobiography. The gates swung open, and the vehicles rolled into the compound one after another, tires crunching on the gravel driveway. The children rushed to the front steps, waving excitedly as the doors opened. Chief Emika emerged first, tall, imposing, dressed in a crisp white agbada with gold embroidery that caught the sunlight. He scooped up Samtachukwu and Adiz in one sweeping hug, his deep laugh echoing across the yard. "My grandchildren, look how big you've grown." Lady Ngozi followed, elegant in a flowing royal blue geli and wrapper, distributing kisses and small envelopes of transport money to the nannies and house staff who came out to greet them. Dr. Obi stepped out next, distinguished in a tailored English suit despite the heat, carrying a leather doctor's bag out of habit even though he was here as a grandfather, not a physician. Ezen was a vision in vibrant orange lace, her jewelry glinting as she hugged each child individually, murmuring blessings in Igbo. Ndabizi, life is supreme. Ifyinanya, love, you will all grow in wisdom and favor. The trunks were unloaded with military precision, suitcases for the elders' 2-week stay, plus several large coolers and wrapped parcels that made Chitty raise an eyebrow. Mummy, Daddy, we said light packing, he reminded gently. Chief Emiko waved a hand dismissively. Ah, my son, these are just small things for the children. Sweets from London, some educational toys, nothing much. Adora caught Ezen's eye and received a conspiratorial wink. She made a mental note to inspect the parcels later. The handover was thorough. Chitty walked the grandparents through the house, pointing out routines on laminated charts posted in the kitchen and playroom. Meal times, snack limits, fruit and nuts only between meals, screen rules, one educational DVD per day, maximum. Bedtime at 8 p.m. sharp, and the chore chart where each child had daily tasks. Adora reviewed medical information, allergies, none, current medications, multivitamins only, emergency numbers, and the location of the first aid kit. The nannies and house manager would remain on duty for continuity, but the grandparents would be in charge. The children, wide-eyed at having all 4 grandparents under one roof, clung to legs and asked endless questions. Will you tell us stories every night? Can we visit your big house? Will you cook pounded yam? Lady Ngozi knelt to their level. Every night, stories. And yes, we will cook all your favorites, but we will follow Mummy and Daddy's rules, okay? The elders nodded solemnly when Chitty reiterated, no excessive gifts, please. No staying up late. No gadgets or sweets before meals. We want them to have fun, but to stay grounded. Dr. Obi placed a hand on Chitty's shoulder. We understand, my son. We will respect your ways. There were photos, of course, group shots on the front steps with the children lined up in front, grandparents behind, Chitty and Adora on either end with their suitcases. The octuplets waved homemade bon voyage signs they had colored the day before. Hugs were exchanged, long, emotional ones between Adora and her mother, a firm handshake and backslap between Chitty and his father. As the driver loaded the couple's bags into the airport car, the children began to sense the reality of the separation. Ifeoma's lip trembled. Uchechi hid behind Ezen's wrapper. Even boisterous Chikwudi looked suddenly small. Adora knelt, gathering them all into a circle. Mummy and Daddy are going to rest and pray so we can be strong for you, she said, voice steady despite the lump in her throat. You will have so much fun with Grandma and Grandpa. Be good, help them, say your prayers, and remember, we love you bigger than the sky. Chitty added, and when we come back, we'll bring stories and small surprises. Be kind to each other, okay? One by one, they hugged each child, naming them individually, whispering personal blessings. Obina, be the leader you are. Nkechi, keep smiling. Kalechi, thank God every day. Tears flowed freely now, but they were tempered by the children's excitement at the adventure of having the house full of grandparents. Finally, the car pulled away. From the back window, Chitty and Adora watched 8 small figures waving frantically, flanked by 4 proud elders. The gates closed behind them, and the car merged into Lekki traffic, bound for the airport. In the sudden quiet of the back seat, Adora leaned her head on Chitty's shoulder. We did it, she whispered. He kissed the top of her head. Yes, and now us. Behind them, the grandparents turned back into the house, arms around grandchildren, already planning the first of many indulgent, but promised to be restrained, adventures. The mansion, usually so structured under Chitty and Adaora's watchful eyes, was about to enter a very different 2 weeks. And in the sky above Lagos, a plane waited to carry 2 exhausted, loving parents toward 14 days of rediscovery, romance, and the simple joy of being just a husband and wife again. Rediscovering love. The flight to Dubai felt like a dream from the moment the plane lifted off the runway at Murtala Mohammed International Airport. For the first time in 6 years, Chitty and Adora sat side by side with no car seats to buckle, no snacks to distribute, no chorus of, "Are we there yet?" from the back. The cabin lights dimmed for the night journey, and Adora rested her head on Chitty's shoulder, his arm around her as naturally as it had been on their honeymoon. They whispered like young lovers again, about nothing and everything, until sleep finally claimed them both, undisturbed by cries or monitor beeps. They landed in Dubai just after dawn, the city emerging from the desert like a glittering mirage. The air was cooler than Lagos, dry and crisp, carrying faint hints of spice and sea. Immigration was smooth, their modest luggage collected quickly, and soon they were in a taxi heading toward Jumeirah. Adora pressed her face to the window, wide-eyed at the towering skyline. The Burj Khalifa piercing the clouds, the sail-shaped Burj Al Arab gleaming white against the blue. "It's like waking up in another world," she murmured. Chitty squeezed her hand. "Our world, for 2 weeks." Their hotel was not one of the ultra-luxury palaces the grandparents would have booked, but a comfortable mid-range resort near the beach with a small pool, clean rooms, and a balcony overlooking the Persian Gulf. They checked in, dropped their bags, and stood on that balcony for a long time, arms around each other, watching the waves roll in. No schedule, no chores waiting, just the sound of water and gulls, and the warmth of the rising sun on their faces. The first few days passed in a blissful haze of simple pleasures they had almost forgotten existed. They slept late, until 9 or 10 a.m., waking naturally without 8 little feet pattering down the hallway. Breakfast was leisurely. Fresh dates, labna, flatbread, and strong Arabic coffee on the terrace, feeding each other pieces of fruit and laughing at private jokes. They walked the beach hand in hand, barefoot in the sand, collecting tiny shells and letting the waves wash over their ankles. Evenings brought sunsets that painted the sky in impossible shades of orange and pink, watched from beach loungers with nothing but each other for company. One afternoon, they took an abra, a traditional wooden boat, across Dubai Creek to the old souks. The spice market enveloped them in clouds of cardamom, saffron, and cinnamon. Vendors called out in melodic Arabic, offering samples of dates stuffed with almonds. In the gold souk, light bounced off glittering displays, but they bought nothing extravagant, just a simple silver bracelet for Adora engraved with their initials and the date, and matching prayer beads for Chitty made of cool black onyx. They haggled playfully with a shopkeeper, reverting to their market days in Lagos, and walked away laughing at how little they had spent. Another day, they joined a budget desert safari, shared jeep, not private. The ride over the dunes was thrilling, the vehicle climbing and plunging until they screamed like teenagers. At the camp, they watched a belly dancer under the stars, ate grilled meat and hummus around a fire, and rode camels together, Adora clinging to Chitty as the animal lurched to its feet. Later, wrapped in a shared blanket against the surprising desert chill, they lay back on cushions and looked at a sky so full of stars it felt close enough to touch. "Do you remember when we used to dream about nights like this?" Adora whispered. Chitty kissed her temple. "We're living it now." Romance returned slowly, then all at once. The first night, they were almost shy, bodies changed by parenthood, rhythms disrupted for years. But exhaustion gave way to tenderness, and tenderness to passion. They rediscovered each other with the wonder of first lovers and the depth of old ones. Long kisses in the shower, lazy mornings tangled in sheets, quiet laughter when they realized how much they had missed simple touch. One evening, they dressed up, Adora in a flowing dress bought in the souk, Chitty in a crisp shirt, and found a rooftop restaurant playing live Afrobeat covers. They danced slowly to songs that reminded them of university parties, foreheads touching, moving as one. They talked, really talked, for hours, about fears they had buried. Adeora's quiet worry that motherhood had erased the ambitious woman she once was. Chitty's guilt over pausing his career and wondering if he was still the provider he wanted to be. About dreams for the future. Travel with the children when they were older, perhaps restarting their professions in new ways. Maybe even one day building a small family resort in Calabar. About faith. How the octuplets had deepened it, but also tested it. They prayed together on the balcony one dawn, facing the rising sun, thanking God for the miracle of their family and asking for wisdom to balance love for their children with love for each other. They sent occasional WhatsApp photos to the grandparents, sunset shots, a camel selfie, receiving in return adorable videos of the children waving or proudly showing off a drawing they had made for Mummy and Daddy. The updates reassured them. The children were happy, eating well, sleeping on schedule, mostly. The grandparents seemed to be respecting the rules. No evidence of excessive gifts in the photos, at least. Halfway through the trip, on Christmas Eve, they splurged on a Dow dinner cruise. The wooden boat glided along the marina, lights of the city reflecting on the water like scattered diamonds. They ate Emirati cuisine, makbuz, lukamat, and watched fireworks burst over the Burj Khalifa at midnight, welcoming Christmas Day. Under the display, Chitty pulled Adora close and spoke words he hadn't said in far too long. "You are still the most beautiful woman I have ever seen, and I fall in love with you more every day, even the hard ones." She cried happy tears into his shoulder. "And you are my rock, Chitty. Always." The remaining days blurred into more walks, more laughter, more quiet moments of reconnection. They visited the Dubai Miracle Garden, fields of flowers arranged in impossible shapes, and took silly photos under heart-shaped arches. They rode the metro just for fun, people watching and holding hands like teenagers. They attended a Christmas service at a small expatriate church, singing carols in English and feeling the familiar comfort of faith far from home. By the end of the 2 weeks, they were tanned, rested, and utterly renewed. The lines of exhaustion around their eyes had softened. Their conversations flowed easily again, about everything and nothing. Their touches were frequent and natural. They felt, for the first time in years, like partners in adventure, not just co-parents in survival. On the flight home, Adora rested her head on Chitty's chest. "Thank you," she said simply. "For what?" "For reminding me who we are when the world isn't watching. For giving us this." He kissed her hair. "We needed it. And now, we go home stronger. For them. And for us." Below them, as the plane began its descent into Lagos, the city lights appeared once more. Familiar, chaotic, beloved. They were ready to return to their 8 miracles. But neither could have imagined how much those miracles, and the grandparents' loving indulgence, had changed in their absence. The shocking return. The flight back to Lagos was bittersweet. Chitty and Adora held hands across the armrest, fingers intertwined as they watched the Arabian coastline fade below the clouds. They were tanned, rested, and profoundly reconnected, speaking in the easy shorthand of newlyweds again, sharing private smiles over memories of desert sunsets and midnight dances. Adora's new silver bracelet caught the cabin light whenever she moved. Chitty absent-mindedly rolled his onyx prayer beads between his fingers. They had even made quiet plans for the future. Small weekend getaways once a year, a savings fund just for us, trips, and a promise to carve out one evening a week for dates at home once the children were asleep. As the plane began its descent into Murtala Mohammed International, excitement bubbled up. "I can't wait to see their faces," Adora said, squeezing Chitty's hand. "They'll have grown an inch, I swear." Chitty laughed. "And they'll talk nonstop for hours. I miss those voices." Immigration and baggage claim passed in a happy blur. Their driver, sent by the grandparents, met them at arrivals with a sign reading, "Welcome home, Mummy and Daddy," in childish scrawl, clearly the work of the Octuplets. In the car, Adora scrolled through the latest WhatsApp updates. Photos of the children at the Lekki Conservation Center posing with monkeys, a video of them singing Christmas carols in matching red outfits, another of them helping, bake chin-chin in the kitchen. Everything looked joyful, orderly. The captions from Lady Ngozi and Ezen were full of praise. "They are such good children, eating all their vegetables. Bedtime on time every night." The drive through Lagos traffic felt familiar and comforting. The honks, the okadas, the hawkers selling phone chargers at red lights. As they turned into Lekki Phase 1 and approached the mansion gates, the sun was setting in a blaze of orange, just like the ones they had watched in Dubai. But the first hint that something was different came before the car even stopped. Lined up along the front lawn, gleaming under the security lights, were 8 brand-new bicycles. Shiny, colorful, professional-grade models with training wheels for the younger ones, baskets, bells, and streamers fluttering in the evening breeze. Beside them stood 2 electric ride-on Jeeps the size of small cars, complete with working headlights and faux leather seats. A large inflatable bounce house, still partially inflated, dominated one corner of the garden, its bright cartoon characters grinning maniacally. Chitty's brow furrowed. "Did we order those?" Adora stared, confused. "No, definitely not." The gates opened, and as the car rolled up the driveway, the front door burst open. 8 children came running out in a chaotic wave, dressed not in their usual simple play clothes, but in brand-new designer outfits. The boys in miniature Nike tracksuits and glowing sneakers, the girls in frilly dresses with sequins that caught the light. Each clutched something expensive, a glowing tablet, a remote control drone, a talking doll with real hair. "Mummy, Daddy," they shouted, but the hugs felt rushed, almost distracted, as several immediately turned back toward the house. "Come see what Grandpa bought us." Chitty and Adora stepped out of the car slowly, exchanging a puzzled glance. The children dragged them by the hands toward the living room, babbling over each other. "Look at my iPad. It has games. Grandma got me a robot that follows me. We went to the mall every day." Inside the house, the transformation was staggering. The once tidy living room looked like a high-end toy store had exploded. Boxes and wrapping paper littered the floor. Remote control cars zoomed across the marble. A massive flat-screen TV, far larger than the modest one they owned, dominated the wall, paused on a cartoon channel. Shelves groaned under new gadgets, gaming consoles, VR headsets, stacks of video games, dollhouses with working lights, a miniature kitchen set complete with battery-operated appliances. The playroom down the hall was worse, a full drum kit, electric keyboards, karaoke machines with microphones, even a child-sized ATV parked indoors. The kitchen table was covered in half-eaten treats, packets of imported chocolates, crisps, fizzy drinks and flavors they had never allowed. A professional-grade ice cream maker sat on the counter beside tubs of expensive brands from Cold Stone. And in the center of it all stood the grandparents, beaming proudly amid the chaos. Chief Emeka had Samtachukwu on his shoulders. Lady Ngozi was helping Adiz try on sparkly shoes. Dr. Obi filmed the scene on his phone. Ezen arranged yet another new outfit on Ifeoma. "Welcome home, my children." Chief Emeka boomed, striding forward to embrace Chitty. "Look how happy they are." Adaora's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She stared at a pile of shopping bags in the corner, logos from luxury stores in Dubai, London, even a few from the Palms Mall, overflowing with more clothes, shoes, and accessories. Chitty found his voice first. "Daddy, Mummy, what is all this?" Lady Ngozi laughed lightly. "Ah, Chitty, don't be cross. It's Christmas." The children were so good, so sweet. They asked for small things, and we couldn't say no. Dr. Obi nodded. "We took them shopping, just a few times. They deserved it after being away from you." Ezen added. "And we hired a chef for a few days, proper meals from Abuja. They ate everything." The children, sensing the shift in atmosphere, grew quieter but still buzzed with excitement. Chukwudi tugged Chitty's hand. "Daddy, Grandpa said I can have screen time whenever I want now." Nkechi twirled in her dress. "Grandma bought me 10 new ones. I don't have to share anymore." Obina zoomed a drone dangerously close to the ceiling fan. "Look what I can do." Adora knelt to Ifeoma's level, trying to keep her voice steady. "Sweetheart, where are your old toys? The wooden blocks? The books?" Ifeoma shrugged. "Grandpa said they're for babies. We have better ones now." The words landed like a punch. Chitty and Adora exchanged a long look, shock giving way to a sinking realization. In 2 short weeks, the disciplined, contented children they had raised, the ones who shared everything, played imaginatively with simple things, and went to bed without protest, had been transformed. The house that had rung with songs and stories now echoed with electronic beeps and demands for more. The grandparents, still smiling, seemed oblivious to the storm gathering on their children's faces. "Sit, sit," Chief Emeka urged. "We have pounded yam and egusi waiting, special recipe." The children helped. But as Chitty and Adora stepped further into their own home, surrounded by the wreckage of routines and values they had fought so hard to instill, the joy of their return evaporated. The holiday had restored their marriage. But in their absence, the grandparents' love, generous, boundless, and unchecked, had quietly undone years of careful parenting. And the real work of reclaiming their family was only just beginning. Grandparents' confession. Chitty and Adora stood frozen in the doorway of their own living room, suitcases still in hand, as the full extent of the transformation sank in. The air smelled faintly of imported chocolate and new plastic, a far cry from the usual sense of Adeora's homemade meals and fresh garden herbs. The marble floor, once kept meticulously clean by the children's daily sweeping chores, was scattered with wrapping paper, toy packaging, and stray crisps crunched underfoot. The walls, previously adorned with the Octuplets' simple crayon drawings and Bible verse posters, now had temporary LED strip lights taped along the edges, pulsing softly in rainbow colors. The grandparents, sensing the shift in atmosphere, finally paused their celebrations. Chief Emeka set Samtachukwa down gently. Lady Ngozi smoothed her galley, her smile faltering just a little. Dr. Obi pocketed his phone. Ezen busied herself straightening a stack of new storybooks, hardcover imports with embossed covers and pop-up pages. The children, picking up on the sudden tension, grew quieter. The drones stopped buzzing. The tablets were lowered. 8 pairs of eyes darted between parents and grandparents. Adora found her voice first, though it came out softer than she intended. "Mummy, Daddy, Papa, Mama, can we talk in the dining room? Please." The elders exchanged glances, part sheepish, part defensive, and followed the couple through the connecting archway. Chitty closed the sliding doors behind them, leaving the children in the living room with the nannies, who had emerged wide-eyed from the kitchen. The dining table, usually set for disciplined family meals with placemats and a centerpiece of fresh flowers from the garden, was now covered in takeaway containers from high-end restaurants, boxes of sushi, trays of shawarma, pizza slices congealing on designer paper plates. A half-eaten chocolate fountain sat in the center, its cascade slowed to a lazy drip. Chitty exhaled slowly, trying to keep his tone respectful. "What happened here?" Chief Emeka cleared his throat, settling into a chair with the confidence of a man used to boardrooms. "My son, my daughter, don't look so serious. We only wanted to give the children a memorable Christmas." Lady Ngozi nodded eagerly. "Exactly. You both work so hard. Deprive yourselves of so much. We thought, while you were away, just a little spoiling. Nothing permanent." Dr. Obi adjusted his glasses. "We took them to the Palms Mall 3, maybe 4 times. They were so well-behaved in the beginning. Pointed at things with such wonder. How could we say no?" Ezen jumped in, her voice warm and defensive. "And the bicycles. Every child needs a bicycle. We bought helmets too, safety first. And the bounce house was on sale. They played in it for hours every day." Adaora's hands trembled slightly as she gestured toward the living room. "But the tablets? The gaming consoles? The clothes? Dozens of outfits when they have perfectly good ones upstairs? We asked you, specifically, to follow our rules. Limited suites. No gadgets. Bedtime at 8. Shared toys, not individual access." Chief Emeka waved a hand. "Ah, Adora, these children are our grandchildren, blood of billionaires. They should know what is available in the world. You keep them like village children, no offense, and we only wanted them to taste a little comfort." The word stung. Chitty felt heat rise in his chest. "Daddy, with all respect, we are raising them the way we believe is right. Not like village children, but like children who will grow with character, gratitude, and discipline, not entitlement." Lady Ngozi interjected softly. "We didn't mean to undermine you. It started small. A treat here, a toy there. But they are so charming. Those big eyes, those sweet voices saying, 'Please, Grandma,' or 'Thank you, Grandpa.' We couldn't resist." Dr. Obi added. "And truthfully, we hired a private chef for a few days, someone from a 5-star hotel in Abuja. The children ate things they had never tried. Pasta, grilled salmon, fresh juices. They loved it. We thought, what harm in a little variety?" Ezen smiled. "We even took them to my showroom one day. Let the girls try on pretty dresses. The boys got smart native outfits. They felt like princes and princesses. You should have seen their faces." Chitty rubbed his temple. "But now they're saying things like, 'I don't have to share anymore,' and 'screen time whenever I want.' That's not the children we left." There was a long pause. The grandparents looked at each other, realization dawning. Chief Emeka sighed deeply. "Perhaps we went too far." Lady Ngozi's eyes misted. "We only wanted to give them what we could. We thought, 2 weeks. It would be our special time. We didn't think it would change them so quickly." Dr. Obi nodded slowly. "Children are sponges. They absorb everything, good and bad." Ezen reached across the table, taking Adaora's hand. "Forgive us, my daughter. We love them so much. Sometimes that love makes us foolish." Adaora's anger softened at the genuine remorse in her mother's eyes, but the hurt remained. "We trusted you to respect our home, our rules. Now we have to undo all of this. It won't be easy." Chitty spoke quietly but firmly. "We appreciate everything you've done, the time, the care, the love. Truly. But from now on, visits must follow our guidelines completely. No more surprises. No more overriding our decisions." The elders nodded, subdued. Chief Emeka stood, placing a hand on Chitty's shoulder. "You are right, my son. We overstepped. We will help fix it, whatever you need." But as the grandparents filed out to begin saying goodbyes to the children, Chitty and Adora remained at the table, staring at the chocolate fountain and the scattered remnants of indulgence. The confession had come, loving, well-meaning, but devastating in its impact. The holiday had restored their marriage, but the home they returned to felt suddenly foreign. And the hardest part, reclaiming the hearts and habits of 8 bright, impressionable 6-year-olds, was still ahead. The painful shift. The grandparents left the next morning in the same gleaming convoy they had arrived in, but the departure felt nothing like the joyful handover 2 weeks earlier. Hugs were exchanged, yes, and promises of "we'll visit soon" were made, but the air carried an unspoken weight. Chief Emeka clasped Chitty's hand a little longer than usual, murmuring, "We are sorry, my son. Call us when you need help fixing this." Lady Ngozi pressed envelopes of cash into Adaora's palm. "For whatever you decide to do with the extras," but Adora gently returned them. Dr. Obi offered medical checkups for any overstimulation stress, and Ezen tearfully hugged each grandchild twice, whispering apologies only the children could hear. As the gates closed behind the SUVs, the mansion fell into an eerie quiet. The children stood in the driveway waving until the cars disappeared, then turned back toward the house with expectant faces, already asking, "Can we play on the tablets now? When are Grandma and Grandpa coming back?" Chitty and Adora exchanged a long, heavy look over the children's heads. The painful shift, the one they had dreaded but now could not ignore, was fully visible. It started small but cut deep. At breakfast the next day, Adora prepared their usual simple meal: akamu with milk, mwamwa wrapped in leaves, and fresh oranges sliced into eighths. The children sat at the long table, but instead of the usual chatter and gratitude, there were complaints. "This pap is too thick," Obina grumbled, pushing his bowl away. "Where's the chocolate cereal Grandpa bought?" Nkechi asked, lower lip jutting out. "I want juice from the carton, not this watery Zobo," Kalechi added. Adaora's heart sank. These were the same children who, just weeks ago, had eaten whatever was served with "thank you, Mummy," and second helpings when offered. Now they picked at their food, eyes darting toward the kitchen where the imported cereals and sugary drinks still sat in the pantry, untouched by parental hands since the return. Lunch was worse. Chitty grilled chicken in the garden the way they loved, served with jollof rice and vegetables. But half the plates came back barely touched. "I'm not hungry," Yuchechi declared dramatically. "Grandma let us have ice cream before lunch sometimes." Chitty gently corrected her. "That was a special treat while we were away. Now we're back to our normal rules. Proper meals first." Yuchechi crossed her arms. "I liked Grandma's rules better." The words hung in the air like a slap. Adora felt tears prick her eyes, but she busied herself clearing plates so the children wouldn't see. Bedtime revealed the deepest wound. The old routine had been sacred: baths in rotation, pajamas, family devotion with songs and prayers, one story read aloud, lights out by 8 o'clock. Now, as Adora called bath time, the response was not the usual cheerful scramble, but groans and negotiations. "Do we have to?" Sampachukwu whined. "Grandpa let us stay up till 10 watching movies." "We're not tired," Adiz added, clutching her new tablet. "Can we play one more game?" Chitty knelt to their level, voice calm but firm. "No screens after dinner. That's the rule. Time for baths." But the resistance grew. Ifeoma, sweet, attached Ifeoma who used to cling to Adaora's legs, pushed away when her mother reached for her. "I want Grandma to bath Maine. She tells better stories." One by one, the children echoed similar sentiments. "Grandpa's house is bigger. Grandma buys better toys. I miss when they were here." The preference was no longer subtle. It was spoken aloud, an innocent 6-year-old honesty that made it all the more heartbreaking. That night, after the children were finally asleep, later than usual, after much coaxing and a few tears, Chitty and Adora sat on the veranda in the dark, the way they had the night they planned the holiday. But this time there was no excitement, only grief. "They don't want us," Adora whispered, voice breaking. "They want what the grandparents gave them. The things. The freedom." Chitty pulled her close, his own throat tight. "It's not us they're rejecting. It's the boundaries. We knew this could happen. That wealth can spoil if not handled carefully." But seeing it, hearing it from their mouths. They sat in silence, listening to the distant hum of Lagos traffic and the occasional bark of a neighbor's dog. Adora wiped tears angrily. We sacrificed everything to be there for them. Paused careers, lived simply, poured our lives into discipline and love. And in 14 days, Chitty nodded slowly. Grandparents' love is different. It's celebratory, not daily. They don't have to say no. They don't have to teach delayed gratification or sharing. They just give. But now our children think that's normal. That love means getting everything you ask for. The next days confirmed the shift in small, painful ways. The beautiful wooden blocks and books, the toys that had sparked hours of imaginative play, gathered dust in a corner while the children fought over who got the tablet next. The garden swing set stood empty. They preferred the bounce house that was still inflated in the side yard. When Adora suggested a storytelling session, only 2 children joined her. The others begged to watch cartoons on the new massive TV. Even affection felt different. Hugs were quicker, bedtime kisses distracted. When Chitty tried to initiate their old devotion songs, the children sang half-heartedly, asking instead for the funny videos Grandpa showed us. One afternoon, Adora found Nkechi and Ifeoma in the playroom, dressing their old cloth dolls in the fancy new outfits bought by Ezen. "These clothes are better," Nkechi said matter-of-factly when Adora asked about it. "The old ones were ugly." Adora retreated to the kitchen and cried quietly over the sink. Chitty found her there. "We can fix this," he said, though his voice held the same doubt she felt. "We just have to be consistent. Patient." But the most painful moment came on the third night home. As Adora tucked Adiz in, her youngest girl, the one who used to fall asleep only in her mother's arms, Adiz looked up with big, serious eyes and asked, "Mummy, when are Grandma and Grandpa coming back to live with us?" Adora's heart cracked clean in two. She kissed Adiz's forehead, whispered "Soon, my love," and fled to the hallway where she leaned against the wall, sobbing silently. The shift was complete. In 14 days of boundless indulgence, the children had tasted a different kind of love, one wrapped in possessions and permissiveness, and now preferred it to the steady, structured love their parents had given them for 6 years. The holiday had healed Chitty and Adora's marriage, but it had, unintentionally, created a rift between them and the 8 miracles they had sacrificed everything to raise. And the road to repair it would be long, deliberate, and painful for everyone. Reclaiming control. The morning after the grandparents' departure, Chitty and Adora woke early, long before the children stirred. They sat at the kitchen table with strong tea and a notepad, faces drawn from a sleepless night of whispered conversations and quiet tears. The house felt different now, the silence no longer peaceful, but heavy with the echoes of complaints and preferences spoken aloud. They knew what had to be done. The spoiling had taken root quickly, faster than they could have imagined, but they were determined to pull it out before it spread further. "We start today," Chitty said firmly, though his voice carried the ache of a father wounded by his children's words. "No delay. Consistency is everything." Adora nodded, jotting notes. "First, the excess goes. We can't undo the gifts entirely without confusing them, but we limit access. Everything new goes into storage. They earn time with special toys through good behavior." Second, Chitty continued, routines back in full force. Meals, bedtime, chores, no negotiations. Third, Adora added, we rebuild connection. More time together as a family. Outings, stories, play without screens. We remind them why our way feels good. They called it Operation Reset, a gentle but firm reclaiming of the home and hearts they had so carefully shaped over 6 years. Phase 1 began immediately after breakfast. Chitty gathered the children in the living room while Adora brought out large plastic storage bins. With calm voices, they explained, "Mummy and Daddy are so happy you had fun with Grandma and Grandpa. They love you very much and gave you wonderful gifts. But now that we're home, we return to our family rules. Too many toys at once make it hard to appreciate any of them. So the new things will go away for now. You'll still have your old favorites, the blocks, books, football, dolls, and you can earn time with one special new toy each week by helping and being kind." There were protests, of course, but Grandpa said the tablet is mine. Chiquiti argued, eyes filling with tears. Grandma promised I could keep all the dresses. Ketchy wailed. Ifeoma clung to her talking doll. Don't take it away. Adora knelt, hugging them one by one. We're not taking them forever. We're teaching you to take care of what you have. When you show responsibility, tidying your room, sharing, finishing meals, you'll get to choose one special toy for the weekend. It took hours. Tears flowed. A few tantrums erupted. Samtachikwu even threw himself dramatically on the floor when his drone was placed in a bin. But Chitty and Adora stayed consistent. Calm voices, gentle reminders of rules, natural consequences, early bedtime for anyone who refused to help pack. By evening, the living room was tidy again, the playroom restored to its simple state, and most of the new gadgets locked in a guest room cupboard. Screens were the hardest battle. The massive TV was covered with a sheet for repairs, they told the children, and the tablets placed out of reach. Withdrawal was real, whining, bargaining, even sneaky attempts to find hidden devices. But the parents held the line. No screens except one family movie night per week, chosen together. Meals improved slowly. The imported cereals and sweets were donated to a church orphanage the following Sunday, the children themselves helping pack the boxes as a lesson in giving. Breakfast returned to akamu and mwamwa, lunch to vegetable-rich soups. The first few days saw plates pushed away and complaints of, "I'm not hungry," but hunger eventually won. By the end of the first week, most were eating again without protest, though Kalechi still asked occasionally for Grandpa's chocolate milk. Bedtime resistance lasted longest. The children, accustomed to late nights and unlimited stories from doting grandparents, fought the 8 p.m. lights out fiercely. Adora and Chitty reinstated the full routine, baths scented with local black soap, pajamas, devotion with songs they sang together, one chapter from a classic children's Bible storybook. The first nights were rocky, crying, calls for water, multiple trips to the bathroom. But by persisting, sitting patiently in the hallway, offering back rubs and quiet reassurance, they wore down the resistance. Within 10 days, the children were asleep by 8:30 most nights, waking refreshed instead of cranky. Chores were doubled as a gentle consequence. Each child had age-appropriate tasks, sweeping their section of the veranda, watering plants, folding laundry, setting the table. At first, there were complaints. "Grandma didn't make us do this." But praise and small rewards, extra story time, choosing the dinner vegetable, turned it around. Soon, pride returned. "Look, Mummy, I swept all the leaves myself." The most important part was rebuilding connection. Every evening after dinner, screens stayed off and the family gathered for together time. They played board games with the old puzzles, built elaborate block cities, acted out folktales with costumes from the dress-up box Adora had sewn years ago. Weekends became sacred outings. No malls, no toy stores. Instead, picnics at Lekki Conservation Center watching monkeys, beach days at Elagushi with buckets and spades, visits to the local market where the children helped choose fresh tomatoes and learned to greet vendors in Yoruba. One Sunday, they drove to a village outside Lagos to visit Chitty's extended family, playing with cousins in the compound and eating pounded yam under mango trees. Chitty and Adora poured affection in deliberately. Individual bedtime blessings naming something each child had done well that day. Surprise notes tucked into lunch boxes. "Obina, I love your helpful heart." Extra cuddles during story time. They modeled gratitude openly, thanking God in prayers for simple things like rain for the garden or a good night's sleep. Slowly, painfully slowly at first, the grumbling faded. The children began choosing blocks over requests for tablets. They ate vegetables without bargaining. They shared the single football again without fights. One evening, Ifioma climbed into Adaora's lap unprompted and whispered, "I missed you when you were in Dubai. I like when you tell stories better than the TV." Another night, Chukwudi helped Samtachukwu tie his shoes without being asked and said proudly, "We're a team, right, Daddy?" The preference for grandparents lingered in small ways, occasional questions about when they'll come back with presents, but it softened. The children began seeking their parents first for comfort, stories, play. It took nearly 3 months of unwavering consistency, patience, and love. There were setbacks, a relapse into whining after a short, carefully supervised grandparent visit, a secret attempt to retrieve a hidden toy. But each was met with calm correction and extra connection. By the time the Harmattan winds returned, blowing cool dust through Lagos, the house felt like theirs again. The children played imaginatively for hours with simple toys, ate with appetite and gratitude, slept soundly, and greeted mornings with hugs instead of demands. The rift had been deep, but not permanent. Chitty and Adora had reclaimed control, not through harshness, but through presence, boundaries, and the quiet power of daily love. And in the process, they learned a hard truth. Wealth's greatest danger was not in having it, but in how easily it could overshadow the values they held dear. The octuplets were still young. The lesson would need reinforcing for years. But the foundation, cracked but not broken, had been repaired. Stronger, perhaps, for having been tested. A new balance. The months following Operation Reset were not easy, but they were transformative. Chitty and Adora approached the rebuilding of their family with the same deliberate intention they had brought to every stage of parenthood: prayerful, patient, and united. They knew the damage from 2 weeks of unchecked indulgence could not be undone overnight, but they also knew that love, consistently applied, had the power to heal even the deepest cracks. Spring arrived in Lagos with the usual mix of rain and sunshine, mango trees heavy with fruit, and the air thick with the scent of blooming alamanda. The mansion in Lekki began to feel like home again. The bounce house was deflated and donated to a local orphanage. The excess bicycles were given to cousins in the village. The gadgets remained locked away, released only as hard-earned rewards, and even then, sparingly. The children's complaints faded from daily tantrums to occasional grumbles, and then, gradually, to acceptance. But Chitty and Adora were wise enough to understand that acceptance alone was not enough. They had to replace what had been lost, not just routines, but joy. The kind of joy that came from within, not from packages and screens. So they poured themselves into presence. Weekends became sacred adventure days. Every Saturday, rain or shine, the family piled into the highest bus for outings that cost little but gave much. One week, it was Tarkwa Bay, ferry ride across the lagoon, picnics under palm trees, building sandcastles that 8 pairs of hands turned into elaborate kingdoms. Another was Freedom Park in central Lagos, where the children ran through the old prison grounds turned green space, learning bits of history from plaques while chasing butterflies. They visited Nike Art Gallery, wide-eyed at the towering sculptures and vibrant textiles, then tried their own tie-dye projects at home with kits bought from Balagan Market. Sundays after church often meant village visits, to Chitty's family near Onitsha or Adora's in Imo State when time allowed. The children played with cousins in red earth compounds, fetched water from boreholes, ate fresh palm fruit plucked from trees, and listened to elders tell stories under the moonlight. These trips grounded them. Reminders that life could be rich without wealth, that family was bigger than one house, that joy came from connection, not possession. At home, evenings were reclaimed for togetherness. Screens stayed off. Instead, the long table hosted board games. AO, Ludo, Scrabble Jr., laughter echoing as alliances formed and broke. Adora revived storytelling nights, weaving Anansi tales with modern twists or acting out Bible stories with the children as characters. Chitty taught them traditional Igbo songs on a small wooden flute he had carved himself, their voices blending in harmony that filled the house with warmth. They introduced Gratitude Circle at dinner, each person sharing one thing they were thankful for that day. At first, answers were simple: I'm thankful for rice. But soon they deepened. I'm thankful Obinna shared his crayon with me. I'm thankful Daddy fixed the swing. I'm thankful Mummy sang to me when I had a bad dream. Affection returned in waves. The children sought laps again, asked for individual bedtime blessings, ran to parents first with scraped knees or exciting news from school. Ifioma, once the most vocal about preferring grandma, now fell asleep each night clutching Adaora's hand through the cot bars. Chikwudi, the boldest, began helping Chitty with small repairs around the house without being asked, beaming when praised. The grandparents were not excluded, they were simply brought into the new balance. Visits were scheduled, not spontaneous. Rules were restated clearly in advance. No gifts without parental approval, no overriding routines, no mall trips without discussion. The elders, chastened by the near rift they had caused, complied with surprising grace. Chief Emeka brought wooden puzzles he carved himself during quiet evenings. Lady Ngozi taught the girls simple embroidery. Dr. Obi told medical adventure stories that educated without gadgets. Ezen cooked with Adora and the children, passing down recipes instead of buying clothes. One memorable Sunday, all four grandparents joined a family beach picnic at Elagushi. Blankets spread, coolers of homemade chin-chin and zobo, children building sandcastles while elders told stories of their own childhoods. No shopping bags, no screens, just presents. The children reveled in it, and Chitty and Adora watched with full hearts, knowing the balance had shifted toward health. The preference for grandparents' indulgence faded almost entirely. Occasional questions, when will Grandpa bring the big TV back, were met with gentle reminders. We have everything we need right here. And slowly, the children agreed. By the time the octuplets turned 7, the storm had passed. The mansion rang once more with imaginative play, shared toys, and the easy rhythm of a family rooted in values deeper than wealth. The children spoke proudly of our rules and our adventures, inviting classmates over to show off the garden swing set and block cities, not hidden gadgets. One quiet evening, as Chitty and Adora sat on the veranda watching the children chase fireflies in the dusk, Adora rested her head on his shoulder. "We almost lost them," she whispered. Chitty kissed her temple. "But we didn't, because we fought for them, the right way." She smiled. "And for us." He nodded. "Especially for us." In the years that followed, the story of the Christmas the grandparents spoiled everything became family lore, told with laughter around dinner tables, a cautionary tale wrapped in love. The octuplets grew into teenagers and young adults who understood wealth's place. A tool, not a master. They excelled in school, volunteered at orphanages, saved allowances for meaningful goals, and cherished family above possessions. Chitty and Adora resumed their careers in time. Chitty consulting on major projects, Adora building a small accounting firm, but never at the expense of presence. They took family holidays annually, sometimes simple, sometimes a little grander, always together. And when grandchildren eventually came, years later, from the octuplets themselves, Chitty and Adora became the grandparents who brought stories, wisdom, and boundaries. Not things, because they had learned, through fire and grace, that true wealth was measured not in billions inherited or spent, but in bonds nurtured, character built, and love given freely, day by day, choice by choice. In the vibrant, unpredictable heartbeat of Lagos, the Okonkwo family stood as a quiet testament that even miracles as great as 8 could be raised with humility, and that love, when balanced with wisdom, could withstand any storm. Thanks for watching. Kindly like, share with friends, and subscribe for more amazing stories.